Welcome into this Five Clubs conversation, and today I am thrilled to be able to talk with one of the people in sports and broadcasting that I admire most, and that's Brandel Chamblee. I've been in broadcasting a long time, and one of the people I've looked up to as to the way he does his job and the manner in which he does it is Brandel Chamblee. I've never had the opportunity to meet him. I have been a longtime admirer and fan. I love his love for the game, for golf history, and how he can give a reasoned judgment and stress test his ideas, and is able to have a debate with another without getting his undies in a bunch. He is just a wonderful broadcaster and a tremendous student of the game. And I'm honored to be able to spend time with Brandel Chamblee, and I think you'll enjoy it. And we are happy to have on this Five Clubs conversation Brandel Eugene Chamblee. And Brandel, one, I'm a huge admirer of yours, both as a person and a professional. But let's start out with the, I guess you'd call it the elephant in the room, and that's the LIV Golf Tour and how it relates to the PGA Tour. First, your broad perspective on the landscape of professional golf right now with the LIV Golf Tour and the PGA Tour.
Well, I'd say it's definitely a threat. Sure, everybody in the world of professional golf is talking about it because they have, and we're talking about the Saudi Arabia regime, but specifically about Mohammed bin Salman, who is MBS. He's the leader of this fund, and they have unlimited budget, and they have a very big need to do what's known as sports washing. If your audience isn't familiar with that term, essentially it's hiring entertainers and throwing lavish amounts of money at entertainers and athletes to have these big events, to get them to look over there at the event and not specifically at the egregious atrocities being committed within those countries. But MBS and I'm going to call them thugs because that's what they are funding this league, and they're trying to buy as many of the best players in the world. And essentially, it's a hostile takeover, an attempted hostile takeover of the PGA Tour. So it will eventually, I have no doubt, end up in court, where the tour's policies about granting leaves to go play in these events will come into question. The thing is that those policies have always been under scrutiny. They have gone to court on those. The tour has always come out on the right side of those. But it's setting up for, and I know you're a lawyer by trade, so I wouldn't mind, if you have an opinion on this from an antitrust standpoint, because I have talked to a few lawyers about this, and there's some that say it's an uphill battle for the tour, and some say the tour is on steady ground. But eventually, this will be fought in the courts, I have no doubt.
Yeah, it is a difficult question on the antitrust side, and one that has nuance to it. And speaking of nuance, Brandel, oftentimes in any area, we tend to go all or nothing, black or white. On the moral side, if you just keep this to a moral decision, I don't think there seems to be controversy. It's a black and white decision. Do you feel that the players, PGA Tour players that are deciding upon whether to participate in the LIV Golf Tour, it's solely a moral issue, or do you see it as having any nuance at all?
Well, I think the ones that are ignoring the moral issues are being willfully blind to it, because if you spend, I spend a lot of time on it, but if you just spent an hour researching the atrocities and specifically what MBS is trying to do, either on the internet or, go to YouTube, and I look at all the debates, I look at all the commentary, both from within Saudi Arabia, but those who've managed to escape Saudi Arabia. I listen to a fella a lot by the name of Mehdi Hassan, who is, I think, just a brilliant analyst. And Mehdi Hassan has been on some debates about whether or not the West should completely separate from Saudi Arabia. Obviously, that's a very controversial topic, but he makes and has strong opinions about this for very specific reasons, all of them being rooted in the atrocities committed in Saudi Arabia, but specifically by MBS, and that he is unique amongst crown princes in Saudi Arabia, that he has centralized power, and that never in the modern history has Saudi Arabia been under the oppression or repression, anything like this. So that's where that's at. If they spend an hour online, they would research that and realize, do you want to play golf for MBS? Do you want to do that? Do you want to give up your independent status as a player? Because no longer will they be able to take a week off here or there if it conflicts with an event. So they will lose their independent status. They'll trade that for money. It's an age-old existential question. Will you trade your morals for money? Will you trade your reputation for compensation? And that's why it is so interesting. It's not just about, and certainly it is fundamentally about the success and continuation of success on the PGA Tour and the PGA Tour's charity dollars. But it is also this existential question. Who's going to do it? Who's going to trade their morals for money? And it turns out a lot of people are willing to. And look, I know people that have been offered upwards of $10 million just to commentate on this event. And the particular person I'm thinking of turned them down. And I applauded this person for it. But others will be tempted by the money, no doubt. And even the richest golfers will be tempted by this. So it's going to be a question back and forth, like a tennis volley. Who's taking it, who's not? And it's really going to be, at least from a moral standpoint, the good guys and the bad guys.
The next level of this, past the moral issue, and it is a big hurdle to get past, but let's get past it to discuss what you mentioned as a threat, and the threat to the PGA Tour that the Live Golf Tour is. Similar in character to maybe the AFL versus the NFL back in the day, the ABA, NBA, USFL, NFL, whatever you like. How does the existence of the Live Golf Tour affect the business of the PGA Tour?
Well, I would just say that the PGA Tour can't compete. So where I would say there's a difference between the analogies that you drew with the AFL, the NFL, the USFL, those are based on market principles. This is what the Live Golf is doing, is they're not based upon market principles. They're based upon market manipulation and an economy of corruption, so to speak. So they don't care at all about making a profit. That's not what this is about. So they have, $600 billion fund. They'll throw upwards of $1 billion this year, another $2 billion next year, and $3 billion the following year at this, with no chance of it bringing a reasonable rate of return. But that's not their goal. So the PGA Tour, from a financial standpoint, why would they try to create, it would be financial suicide for them to do that. So from a competitive standpoint, financially, they're not going to do it. There is a sense they can't do it, but there is a sense that, look, what's Live trying to do? They're trying to get 48 players. Now, they've been trying for 8 years. This idea came about in 2014, and they've been trying on and off for 8 years. And what they managed to do by spending, $500-600 million just to cobble together those players, and roughly $50-60 million to run that event last week, was cobble together a very poor field. When you look at it, I mean, about half those players, it'd be very difficult to even find their world rank. They were, by my count, there were really just a little less than 15 players that anybody would have heard of. Now, what are the chances that they'll be able to cobble together 48 world-class players? It seems unlikely to me, because they're not going to get world ranking points. The world rankings will decay, and that means those players that they've recruited won't get in majors. And so whatever the Saudis are buying from a prestige standpoint and athletic ability, and therefore the ability to distract people away from their atrocities, will wane. Nobody will have any interest. And then the spotlight will then turn right back on these atrocities to whatever extent it wasn't. So from a financial standpoint, the PGA Tour cannot compete. But from an integrity standpoint, I think the Live Golf has a lot of hurdles in front of it.
What about the idea of strength of field? I mean, clearly losing players, even if they may be lesser than the top players still playing on the PGA Tour, the strength of field is clearly going to be affected, and that ultimately could affect dollars for the PGA Tour. How do you see that playing out?
Look, the one thing I think that Liv has overlooked is that you can't just pick players out of a world rank and expect them to maintain that world rank or that standard of play. Play falls off, play rises, it falls. It's not a static system of world rankings. And the Liv Golf has no feeder system right now. Their feeder system, by all practical purposes, is the PGA Tour as players come up. But think about this. If you've committed to Liv Golf, and ultimately, let's just say that the PGA Tour is successful, that they can legitimately suspend players for playing Liv Golf and keep them from playing. So they're going to give up their membership. They're going to go play Liv Golf. So let's say you're one of those 48 players. Let's say Pat Perez does this. Okay, he's 176th in the world. All right, he can no longer play the PGA Tour. He no longer has the PGA Tour champions to play, and he's over on Liv Golf, and they've paid him a little bit of money to go over there. But what's going to happen if Liv Golf gets some momentum and they get some higher ranked players? These lower ranked players that have committed to Liv Golf will be kicked off. They are a depreciating asset, and they will be kicked to the curb when they are no longer deemed to be of value for Liv Golf. Again, there's no safety nets over there. There's no feeder tour. There's no place to take care of them when they come out of college and the prime of their career at the end of their career. So, I think when players begin to get a sense of that, when Pat Perez decides to go over there, and he's over there for 3, 4, 5 tournaments, and they decide that he really doesn't have the marketing value that they thought they were buying, and he gets kicked to the curb and now has nowhere to play, I think that'll begin to hit home with players. That's my view of it. And rationally taking it to its extension, that seems like where the Liv Tour is headed, at least in my view.
Yeah, we talked about the moral side of this. There are pressure points, and right now the focus has been on the pressure points of the players, the PGA Tour membership, the decision that they're making. What about the pressure points for the locations of this event and those that are hosting it? So, for example, Pumpkin Ridge in Oregon. Is there a pressure point there that the PGA Tour and others can put on a place like Pumpkin Ridge to say, we don't approve of you hosting this, and we will not host events or our partners at your facility from now on?
Look, what I've heard is 11 mayors in the Portland area have registered complaints, are very upset that Pumpkin Ridge has done this. I've talked to a couple of members who dropped their membership at Pumpkin Ridge. One of them in particular is well known in the golf world and is very successful at running events in the golf world, and just told me that numerous companies that were planning events at Pumpkin Ridge have decided to go elsewhere. So I think organically they're going to pay a price, metaphorically and literally, by their decision to present a stage for, by some accounts, and I'll go back to Mehdi Hassan on this, Mehdi Hassan will argue, and he'll do it with great foundation to do it, that this is the most oppressive regime in the world. So Pumpkin Ridge is providing a stage for the most oppressive regime in the world to, under the guise or facade of a golf tournament, sports wash right there in their backyard. So I do think, Jay, that there'll be a sort of an organic rebuttal to these events and the places where they're held.
Looking forward, Brandel, if you had a crystal ball, could you see golf coming out of this overall strengthened, or do you see it overall being diminished in the future?
Well, look, the golfers' reputations are going to be tainted by this. And so by extension, the game of golf will be tainted. I think that businesses will, if Liv Golf gets any momentum at all, businesses will begin to look elsewhere for athletes to sponsor. It's always been, I said this the other day, if you look at the top 5 highest paid athletes of all time, it goes Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Arnold Palmer, Jack Nicklaus. So 3 of the top 4 are golfers. And why is that? That they didn't earn all that money or even a significant portion of that money on the tours. They earned that because they're very attractive to businesses because golf, by and large, is a self-pleasing sport that has a great reputation of integrity within the sport. So it's a very attractive demographic for the game of golf. So I think if the athletes are tainted and the sport is tainted, there'll be less interest from a corporate standpoint to fund these tours. But really, if you start to break it down, so if the tour tries to compete with LIV, but they won't be able to, but if they tried and they had to then change the independent contractor status of the players and they become contractors, then imagine the lavish sorts of money that they would have to pay these players to be contractors, such that it would cut into the charity dollars, such that it would cut into the pension fund, such that it would probably, because the charity dollars are no longer prevalent, change the way the pension fund is looked at, change the investment of the corporate world. And so little by little, it would destroy the foundation of the PGA Tour. The foundation of the PGA Tour now is built upon philanthropy with lots of safety nets for the players, pension funds, health funds, healthcare, tours for the beginning, the prime, and the end of their careers. LIV Golf, the foundation, is just sports washing and greed with no safety nets for the players. Again, they're depreciating assets. So look, if they're successful at all, it has the potential to destroy the very foundation of the professional game and the great trajectory that the game has been on, both philanthropically, I think, and then also from an athletic standpoint. With the momentum that, and unfortunately, gambling is a fact in every single sport. Sports gambling is a fact, but it's coming to golf. It's unavoidable. So it's here. NFTs, the money to be made off of NFTs. So the proceeds from gambling, the proceeds from NFTs has the potential to double and triple the purses on the PGA Tour over the next 5 to 10 years. So it's not inconceivable that the athletes, the leading money winner, Jay, might make 60, 50, 60, 70 million dollars playing golf, which is certainly commensurate with major sports with only a marginal participation and far less ratings than major sports. I'd say that's a pretty successful trajectory that the PGA Tour is on.
There's a business side of this, obviously, which you've so eloquently stated. But how about the personal relationship side? I can't think of a sport, a game that is more collegial generally than golf. How is this going to damage personal relationships among those in the game?
Well, on the professional level, I'll be curious to see how the players that have left and gone to LIV are treated. I guess we'll get some preview of that this week. I can say, as we sit here, it's Monday, U.S. Open week. Phil Mickelson's in the press center today at 1. I know that we have cameras following Phil Mickelson around all day long just to see how he's greeted by his peers. It wouldn't surprise me if he was gruffly received by more than a few of them. I'm sure there'll be a few of them that are curious about LIV Golf and will come up and talk to him about it. But tonight on our show, 7 to 9, I'm sure we'll look at a lot of that footage. But it wouldn't surprise me if the players who've left to go to LIV are going to be met with some stern reaction from their fellow peers. And again, some of them will be curious about it, and because there are more defectors coming, no doubt. And we'll see those players, no doubt, going up to the players that defected previously, and we'll see them talking to them. But I think overall, you hit on it. The nature of this game is congenial. It's a lifestyle sport, and this game is as much about the people you meet. Even at the professional level, I think every one of these players will say that the relationships they've forged in pro-ams over the years, they get to play with you, they get to play with CEOs, they get to play with people who are having a nice run in life, and they get to learn from them. But I think that has the potential to be disrupted by this LIV Tour.
Brandel, let's move to your career, specifically your broadcast career. When you are as informed and reasonable in your opinions and your thoughts and your judgments as any broadcaster I have ever known. And when you first started in broadcasting to today, what has been your philosophy of your on-air commentary? Because From my perspective, you're different than most, perhaps than all, and especially in golf, where a lot of us at times, and I'll put myself in this as a broadcaster, there may be an expectation that we're supposed to throw rose petals at people's feet all the time, and you don't. You give the truth all the time. What's your philosophy been throughout the course of your career as to how you do your job?
Well, look, I have always thought that my job is to say why something happened, explain why somebody won, why somebody lost, and that's hard to do. I mean, people, I think in general, are very comfortable with what happened, what the score was, how many fairways somebody hit, how many touchdowns somebody threw, how many home runs or strikes somebody hit or threw. They're very comfortable with what happened. They begin to get less comfortable with why it happened if someone has an opinion. And to get there, I think, is very hard. I think, I have a good work ethic. I love to work. I get up first thing in the morning. I work all day. I love to work. But I'm curious. I sit down and I always say I do research to discover my opinions, not to support my opinions. So I sit down and I just start doing research. I just start writing, looking, go everywhere everything takes me. And then at the end of it, I'll do research for, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks before major championships. And I'll sit down and I'll look at all what is this telling me? What's the story? What's the theme here? What can I dig out of this? What can I drive out of this? And then I start writing and I'll start looking, and then I come to my opinion, and then I'll think, well, what are the counters to that? How could I be wrong? What am I missing? What's somebody going to say to this? And how could I rebut that? And then you just keep going, and you just keep going, and you just keep going until I got my arms around it. I mean, my job is to know the players, and they change all the time. Coaches, teachers, managers, swings, equipment, they change. So every week you got to do that. I got to know the course. And then I got to know as much as I can about the nature of the game, golf swings, and all that nuance. And then because our audience doesn't just watch our sport, they play it and they know it as well as we do. And so, and by the time I come on the air, I always joke that almost everything that could be said about the game has already been said about it. And so my job is to try to come up with something that hasn't been said and say it in a way that resonates with people, that might be memorable, but also maybe gives them some hope of improving themselves. And that's been a heck of an evolution. When I first started in TV, you don't even know where to find the research. You can't even find the stuff. They just like sit in that chair. I'll never forget it. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, talk and be brilliant. And I mean, I was terrible, or I certainly felt like I was terrible. But it takes a lot of research, as you well know, Jay, to have something to say when you go on air. And I love research.
From my seat, Brandel, when I watch you, you don't argue. You make an argument, a reasoned argument in a reasonable discussion, and I think there's a difference there. Where does that come from? Your ability to have a reasoned discussion with someone, make your argument, but you don't ever seem to get rattled by or hurt by the fact that someone else has a differing judgment than you.
Yeah, well, look, it's first of all, it's opinion mostly. I try to base it in fact, but generally speaking, when I'm saying why somebody won or why somebody lost, I would like to think always basing it in fact, but at some point, connecting dots, you're spitting out opinion, and it's I grew up in a family, a big family, 5 brothers and sisters. A couple of them are lawyers. But my dad is a very curious man who likes to debate. And so we grew up in a house where people would sit around the table and debate religion and politics and hunting and fishing, sport, and cowboys, and the Dallas Cowboys, because I grew up in Irving, Texas in a pretty darn good decade, the 70s. And that was a good decade to be a Dallas Cowboys fan. And we debated everything. And my dad was really good at debate. And he was good at poking everybody and trying to figure out where the weaknesses were in your argument. My mom's very religious. My dad's an atheist. I've told this story before. But my dad would invite all these religious people over to our house all the time. very religious people. He'd have them over to the house, and he'd never get upset, but he just wanted to see what they knew, to see what they knew about religion and what they knew about belief and why they believed what they did. And you know, sometimes they'd get upset, but my dad never did. He was just really good at poking the bear, I guess, so to speak. And then, you know, my older brother, I can remember one time during Christmas, my mom, you know, my older brother, his name is Billy, he owns his own law firm in Dallas, and he was getting ready to leave. He'd been at the house a couple hours, and mom's like, man, I wish he'd stay a couple more hours, you know? And I said, I can get Bill to stay a couple more hours. She was like, well, how are you going to do that? I said, you just watch. And so I'm from Texas, you know, where, you know, I know this has been and this is not certainly nothing to joke about these days, because it's certainly front in everybody's minds, and rightfully so, with the tragedies down in Uvalde. You know, but my brother likes to hunt, you know, and he's got a lot of guns, and he goes on lavish trips all over the world to hunt pheasant, you know, exotic animals. And I told my brother that the Second Amendment was an outdated constitutional right. And whether I believed it or not, and I mean, 2 hours later, we were at it. We were going, you know, and I looked over at my mom and I winked at her. Said, I told you I could get him to stay 2 more hours. And you know, I mean, and he, you know, he's so good spirited about it. But my whole family's that way. So, but I do like debate. You know, I don't know a lot about a lot, Jay. And I figure everybody I meet knows something that I don't know about something that I don't know. And I try to learn from them. I really do enjoy people. I really do. And I enjoy talking to people and learning from them.
Well, your love for golf is clear, and you're not only, again, from my seat, technically skilled in the profession of being able to break down the golf swing, golf courses, you know, your knowledge of the game, but your clear love for the history of the game. And that doesn't come from research you did a few days before. This has been a lifelong pursuit for you, clearly. How did that start? The fact that you are so immersed in the tradition and history of the game.
Well, probably I went to the University of Texas, and you know, of course, Ben Crenshaw preceded me there by a decade. But I think when I was there, you know, just being bound around Ben a little bit, and just hearing Ben talk about the history of the game, I think it had an impact on me. So when I was in college, I started reading, you know, about the history of the game. And then, you know, on the tour, I played in an era when families didn't really travel with players. There wasn't enough money. They weren't private jets. I mean, maybe 1 or 2 people had them, or 4 or 5, but not too many. So you're on the road alone. And, you know, I just take big old golf books with me. It was even before the internet, you know, and I really enjoyed it, you know, to read about, you know, Harry Vardon or young Tom Morse or old Tom Morse, or, you know, Walter Travis, to read about them. And then as I've come to do this job, what I love about just having a foundation of the history of the game is it provides context. So, and I would make this argument. So here we are at the country club, right? And in 1913, and you would know this well, and Gary Williams, who you're in business with here, would know this certainly very well. 1913, arguably, maybe not even arguably, the greatest moment in the history of American golf happened right here at the country club. With Francis Ouimet beating 2 giants of the game, and certainly one enormous player in Harry Vardon. That was, you know, spurred the game on. The game went from having 350,000 people playing it to 2.1 in a blink of an eye, okay? So that's arguably the greatest moment in the history of American golf. But I would say what happened yesterday with Rory winning the Canadian Open may well prove 10, 15 years down the road, 100 years down the road, to be one of the most important days in the history of professional golf. The fact that he had such an in-your-face win, and I would say, even though he won by 2, it was dominant in a lot of aspects, the way he hit the golf ball. And it was such an in-your-face back and forth between Rory and Justin Thomas, even Tony Finau. And it was such an answer to what I would call a facade of a golf event over in London. I think it may well go down as one of the greatest moments in the history of professional golf. And the fact that we're here at the country club, as I watched that, I felt was pretty ironic. So history gives you context. And I think it helps you fully appreciate what you're witnessing today. And another thing I think that really does upset people, if you throw out superlatives like gravy, it devalues the actual currency of superlatives. Everything can't be great. And because when something does come along that's great, you've devalued it, you know? And I think superlatives are too quickly thrown around. And I struggle with it as well, to be measured in the response to the achievements that we're watching. And that's tough to do because you get in it, you get after it, but and you get close to it, you get close to the athlete. So I try to keep my distance from the athletes. I always say that I want to be able to say critical things of players that I really like, and complimentary things of players that I don't necessarily like. But I would rather not have any view of the players either way and just look at them purely objectively, which is tough to do, but I try.
Brandel, I've always wanted to ask you this question, and I'll preface it by using, if you want to call my basketball life a career. So I was a celebrated high school player. I was a very solid college player, and I had a very average pro career overseas. When I look back on it and assess it, I'm very happy that I feel like I did well. But at the same time, based upon what I expected and my potential, what I felt like my potential was, I look back and I'm disappointed. When you look at your golf career, great junior player, All-American at Texas, played on the tour for 18 years, won a tour event. How do you feel about your career if you would assess it in your current role as a broadcaster and when you look at yourself self-critically?
Well, when I was listening to you describe your career, I mean, I could certainly relate to a lot of that. You know, I mean, and basketball is certainly not my area of expertise, but I understand that your recruiting class at Duke was exceptional. Was it not?
Yeah, back then it was the number one. I don't know if we lived up to it, but yeah, we were celebrated. Right.
So you had an extraordinary team, an extraordinary high school career, and went overseas. Look, I can remember thinking, you know, in college that I was the best player in the country. Now, that probably wasn't true. It was probably Brad Faxon and maybe even Mark Brooks, but I was in the conversation. And I can, you know, as I played the tour, I was never as good as I was in college. You know, it's all on me. I did it. I changed my swing. I changed my game. And I just never quite played as well as I played in college. Didn't hit it as long, didn't hit it as high. 15 years, the highest I ever got was 57th in the world. But when I look back on it, and people do love to criticize my success in professional golf, I think, man, I gave it everything I had. I rose to 57th in the world. I think that's extraordinary. You know, I think it's not extraordinary achievement in the world of professional golf, but when you think about how many college athletes there are, there's roughly 1,000 golf programs in colleges, 10 players, let's say, on each team. That's 10,000. How many are going to make it to the PGA Tour? There'll be 5 of them make it to the PGA Tour. And how many of them? I played 15 years. How many will play 15 years on the tour? A couple. So a couple out of 10,000. So, you know, I feel like I had some success, decent success on the PGA Tour. I wasn't a star. I was what they call a journeyman. And most people say that pejoratively, but I don't take it that way. You know, I played 15 years. I got to go to the nicest places in the world, play the best golf courses in the best condition, meet the nicest people in the world, and I got paid to do it. And at times I got paid well to do it. You know, I loved every minute of it. And when I quit playing golf, I didn't really quit because I was playing bad. I didn't quit because I was injured. I quit because I just wanted to go do something else. I had played golf every minute of my life. I had given it every minute. I didn't leave anything on the table. And I was, what was I? I was 40 years old. And I just thought, I would like to go do something else. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to give it a shot.
Do you enjoy golf now as much as you did when you were playing competitively, or has it changed for you?
I probably enjoy it more, to be honest with you. I mean, it was a grind when I played professionally. I mean, I enjoyed the adrenaline rush of competing, but now I mostly go out and play golf with my wife or my son. I have two sons. One of them doesn't play, although I'm hopeful. My oldest son he really loves it. So I have a blast. My wife loves golf more than I do. We're going to Scotland after the Travelers, and we're getting over the Open early, and we're going to go play Gullin and Muirfield, North Berwick and Prestwick and Cruden Bay and Royal Dornoch, and she loves it, and we have the best time, and we meet the nicest people. So I really enjoy golf now. I really do. It's not, when I go home, it's a little ways down in my priorities. I would much rather do a few other things, but when I actually play, it's usually with my wife, and I love it. I absolutely love it.
Well, Brandel, I could talk to you about golf and your life and all these different things all day long, but we're gonna end this with 5 questions.
Okay.
Gary Williams turned me on to this, and I like it. So, a golf course that you haven't played that you're dying to play.
That's easy. North Berwick. I've never played North Berwick, and I'm playing it on July 1st, and I can't wait. I absolutely can't wait. I'm going to play it with my wife, and I'm going to play with the captain of the club over there and his wife, and I can't wait.
Well, it's as charming a golf course as there is on the planet. Last time Brandel Chamblee threw a club.
Oh, gosh, it was probably a couple years ago. My wife talked me into playing a few events on the Champions Tour and trying to qualify for the Senior Open. And, I'd go in and there'd be a sign on the mirror. It's 56 days to the qualifying. You haven't practiced. And I was like, oh, gosh, I got to start practicing. So the minute I started practicing, I started really caring about golf. And her and I were out playing one day, and I hit a terrible shot or something. And I think I threw a club. And she looked at me, she's like, I've never seen you do that. I said, well, you've never seen me really care about golf. I said, normally I have a cocktail and we're playing, but all of a sudden I'm trying to get good to qualify for the Senior Open, and my expectations start to raise, and that fire starts to burn inside of you. But yes, I try not to throw them, but occasionally they've left my hand.
So many clubs around the country have a signature thing to eat, whether it's the burger dog at Olympic or the milkshakes at Muirfield. What one signature thing to eat in golf that Brandel Chamblee goes to first?
For a period of time, I lived in Edmond, Oklahoma, and played out of Oak Tree. And there were a lot of tour players living at Oak Tree, but we'd fly home on Monday and we'd go to the club. And at Oak Tree on Monday afternoon, they had white bean soup. And I'm telling you, I still think about that white bean soup. And that was 30 years ago. So white bean soup at Oak Tree Country Club. I don't know if they still serve it. But boy, I'd give anything for that recipe.
I think that's the only white bean soup answer to that question in history. Your A game, your best day with your A game. What player in golf history would you like to play a match against?
Have to be Bobby Jones. I just can't. You can't even make Bobby Jones up. I mean, he got an engineering degree from Georgia Tech. He got a literature degree from Harvard, and then a law degree from Emory. And then he was winning all his majors, and he's just the greatest gentleman the sport has ever produced. So I wouldn't mind getting beat 7-6 by him. Because before he shook my hand on the 12th green, I'd at least, learn something from him, and I'd get to watch that beautiful golf swing.
If you couldn't play golf in your life, what sport would you have gravitated toward?
Probably rodeo. I grew up, I played football, but they got big really quick, and I was fast, but, I wasn't that fast. but I loved horses and I was good at it. I did what they were called play days, but barrels. But my brother and I, we roped cows all day long, rode baby bulls, and we did a lot of dumb things on horseback. But it was a lot of fun. And when I was growing up, that was all I wanted to be, was a rodeo star, until I discovered golf.
That's what I want next. Now that's what I want next. I want Brandel Chamblee to commentate a rodeo event. That's what the world needs, is to hear you take apart a barrel racer for not doing it the right way.
Hey, I'm fine on the barrel racer. I can hardly watch bull riding anymore. When they come out, I'm like, oh gosh, I can't, it scares the hell out of me. But those guys are athletes. You go watch Ty Murray. I think he was 7 times in a row world champion, maybe 8. And he was a fitness nut. And he could do things on a bull that just defied every athletic impulse anybody's ever had. And the whole time you could die any second. And, that's the ultimate sport to me.
Brandel, I had high expectations of you, but I did not expect white bean soup and rodeo. I can't thank you enough for joining us on this five clubs conversation. You've been magnificent. Thank you.
It's a great pleasure to finally meet you, Jay. Thank you for allowing me to sit here and talk with you. Really enjoyed it.
I cannot thank the great Brandel Chamblee enough for joining us on this 5 clubs conversation. And as we closed, all I could think about was getting some white bean soup and heading to a rodeo. I certainly didn't expect those answers, but we appreciate you joining us, and we look forward to seeing you next time.